to say Wednesday night because I'm so used to it, but it's not. It's still Tuesday. The East has caused us to move up the show, but we are here. Tuesday night golf show. Myself, Ben Razza, here with Jason Roslin. We are here to talk about the ZOZO Championship. We got it ready to go. We're going to be answering your questions, talking lineup construction. What say you about this new tournament?
Yeah, I am all in for the ZOZO Championship in Japan. I love the tour doing new things. Obviously, Japan and the area has a tremendous amount on the line in the next 9 months or so, with obviously the ZOZO Championship kind of kicking off things for Japan in the year of the Olympics coming. Definitely will be a good spectacle. I expect a lot of these guys that are competing this week to end up making the team or making the Olympics, at least for their countries. Obviously, there's probably 10 guys in play for the USA. Probably not so much for some of the other countries, but still a good spectacle, a good course, which we'll break down in just a little bit. But before we do that, got anything you want to tell us about?
Sure. As I always do, show sponsored by our friends at FantasyDraft, who, as we know, only place where they're running rake-free fantasy, which means 100% of the entry fees going into those prize pools makes a huge difference in the bottom line. If you haven't signed up and you want to, promo code AWESOMO, you get a 7-day free trial. Go check it out. I know golf right now isn't the biggest, but we plan to rev it up, certainly when the tour gets back to the States. But I will say, I don't like not having Shot Tracker. I don't like not knowing about the course, but the field, it's hard to complain about this field. We got a lot of big names in there.
Yeah, we sure do. And even a little bit better than last week. And we'll do our quick little recap of it. It was tilting on Thursday because, or Wednesday night, I should say, because the PGA Tour put out scores before the tournament even started. And there was a great tweet from Joaquin Neiman and Dylan Fratelli. Two of our guys, too. Two of our guys that we talk about a lot. They just tweeted out like, hey, I got a hole in one on a par 5. It was pretty funny. Definitely added to the tilt level. No doubt about it. However, no surprise, I guess, to see Justin Thomas back and winning. JT and Woodland was the build. JT and Mott's, obviously you could have done really well, but you would have needed to find Windham Clark and Danny Lee to do anything special there. So really, JT and Woodland was the build. Do you have any of those?
I didn't. Truth be told, I'm actually taking the swing season differently. I've been playing on some different sites, changing some things up, so my volume isn't there. So I haven't been making as many teams, but I had told you during the show, and of course, we see what happened. I really took a stand with Brooks. I liked the ownership discount. No, he withdrew. That's not going to get it done. As you just talked about, the JT build was kind of there because you balanced it out with Danny Lee. It was really more about who were those 4 other guys. You mentioned Woodland. There were some other combos in there. But what about you on the whole? How did it shake out?
Yeah, Matt Wolff totally dominated me. I mean, 20+% owned. He was one of my big plays. And I did two in the 500, which I normally do, and one of them had JT in it, but it was paired up with Matt Wolff. So it was almost like a withdraw because he ended up with 40 or something points. I mean,
it was bad.
Yeah, I think he came in, of guys that ended up making it, came in 74th of 78 golfers for a guy 8K. So he dominated me. And then I actually made a pretty good lineup with Spieth, but because Justin Thomas was 30% owned in the 500, it didn't matter. Spieth had a relatively good week, but I didn't pair him up with JT up top. So not a great week. Happy to just straight move on to the ZOZO Championship. 7 p.m. lock time again. Best field we've ever seen. You think that's because it's the first ever event in Japan?
I think it's a combination of that. I assume, I don't have it in front of me, that it's probably somewhat lucrative to go over here in a non-cut. Probably get a nice little paycheck.
Yeah, 15 I think is the minimum. Yeah.
So that'll work. And it makes sense. So I like the way the tour did this, and you go to the CJ Cup, you go to Japan, you go for the WGC coming up, all there. So guys can go over, they can get acclimated. It's not like you're disrupting your schedule by any stretch. So I like it, and I think it's fun. Now we have a course that we have never seen, really. Did you watch, because I know you certainly are always ahead of the game, did you watch any of the skins?
Yeah, I tried to. I would say I've watched the first 6 holes. Fell asleep for the next 7, I'd say, and then caught like the last 3 or 4 as I was drifting. So my takeaways, first, the information we know, par 70, 7,100 yards, maybe a little bit shorter than that. Did you watch it, by the way? Did you watch the?
Not much. I saw a little, mostly actually just the highlights, but I wanted to see if I could see anything from the course, just because any information helps when we have no course history.
Yeah, so the course, I think, is going to play much longer than 7,100 yards. And one of the reasons to that is what's hidden in there is that the par 3s are all under 200 yards. Now, a lot of them are from the 150 to 200, but a lot of the yardage gets seeped down, especially when you have more of them being a par 70, of course.
There's actually 5 of them.
Yeah, 5 of them, exactly, and none of them over 200 yards. So if you go look at the par 4s, and I put this in the First Cut article that's free each week on awesemo.com. The par 4s, there's only one between 400 and 490. Only one. So then you have, I think it's 8 other ones, a couple below 400. That'll be the scoring holes. But then you have 6, I believe, that are over 485. It's going to be long. I don't care if you're Rory McIlroy and the best driver in the world, or if you're Jordan Spieth and can't hit a fairway. That's a long hole. I mean, I think we saw Jason Day. I don't know if you caught this. Jason Day hit a 3-wood into one of them. The 4th hole is going to play the hardest hole on the entire course, I suspect, all week. It's a par 4, 500 yards. It has 2 water hazards. One left off the tee that Matsuyama hit in the Skins game, and then one just short of the first green. Now, here's the interesting thing about this course. Yep. Every hole has 2 greens. So it's basically infinite pin locations that you can choose from. I would love to see them just say, hey, look, you guys can hit to whatever green you want. We're going to put 2 flags out, and you guys get to choose. I feel like for me, that would be a lot of fun for golf. They let them do it in the Skins game on just the 4th hole, so obviously we're not going to get to see that this year. But interesting because the caddies will have to work double time. Greens books will become probably relatively important, but the course looks pristine, tight fairways, but the rough doesn't look too penal. So I don't think we're going to see Rory try and club down off the tee unless it's forced to, of course.
I think so too. Courses like this, I think it gives an opportunity for some of the shorter hitters. They'll have chances if that's their game plan, but I don't think it prevents guys from pulling driver and saying, you know what, I'm going to shorten these holes. There is a weird range. Like we just talked about, 5 par 3s, 3 par 5s, par 70, pretty atypical. So I kind of like that. I think we're going to have to infer because we don't have strokes gain data from last week. We don't have course history. But you know what? I like weeks where game theory, correlation, things like that come into play. And I think that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, certainly. And we got a couple of stats that, I'll throw out every now and again about last week. We have greens and regulation, putts per GIR, and then driving accuracy. So maybe a little bit more important on driving accuracy. I actually take a look at the par 70s on the course or courses that are at 7,000 yards or right around it. Pebble Beach sticks out to me. And you look at the winners of Pebble Beach this year, or the top players. And Gary Woodland and Brooks Koepka were 1-2, right? And they're known as some of the longer drivers. So you see when some of these longer drivers can put the ball in play at a significantly higher rate than some of these other guys, it gives them a leg up on the field. Especially a course like this, what we saw in the Skins game. We saw them hit just a couple of irons off the tees on some of those longer par 4s. But still, most of the time, Rory was hitting driver pretty much everywhere he wanted. So at 7,100 yards, I'm still going to just play the guys. I'm not really going to try and favor accuracy or position over or distance. I just think that there's an opportunity here at this course, it seems, to take advantage of some of these tree-lined fairways and take the corners and so on. So, again, I think it sets up pretty well for any type of golfer the way you want to play it.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for out of a course. It's tough when we're like, all right, take all these golfers and throw them out. We only have 78 guys.
Yep.
So I guess we can dive into it. We've got, how could he not be, even though, I'm always Team Rory, but JT, he's the winner from last week. The guy's playing phenomenal. I assume he's going to be massively popular. How could he not, right?
Yep.
But
I will say, actually, I thought he was going to be popular. I had him first projected. My ownership and of course, the awesemo.com Plus membership will get the full ownership projections tomorrow morning. I had him pegged at about 17 or 18% JT at first, and then I checked around, and most other places have him like close to 10%. So I brought it down just a little bit, which is surprising to me.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of that, to be honest. I know it's early.
Yeah.
I'm more with you. I think he could be north of 20, 25%, to be honest.
Yeah, we've seen JT go on runs. It's not like he wins and he goes away. My question to you is, and I wrote this down in our pre-notes, is Justin Thomas and McIlroy, are they both going to get above 20%? Because we know how popular Rory is.
That is true, and people, they love to play Rory, and I mean, I'm a big Rory guy, and he was phenomenal last year, even though it wasn't in the majors. That is a lot. It's going to be fascinating, because if that's the case, you immediately take almost half the field and you funnel them to a certain build. Because when you start with one of those guys, it's just a different type of build. So if they both take on that kind of ownership immediately, it's hard not to look at, I mean, as we talk about the strength of this field, you've got guys like Decky he's going to be ready. You've got Casey, your boy Spieth, Xander, other names, and we didn't even talk about that next tier. There's a lot of other starting points if you want to omit the top two. So
let's say they both go at 20 to 25%. So one of every two lineups is going to have them. At 70, if you put in, let's just say Rory, who's $300 cheaper than JT, you got $7,700 average remaining price. I mean, there are a couple of guys, I will say there are a couple of guys, again, below 7K that are over here. Your boy Danny Berger is one of them we'll talk about later. But you're going to have to get, I'm just clicking three names quick. You're going to have to get in three down there to go in and get a second or a third stud. And we saw last week how important it was to get two studs in. Now, of course, you had to get the right studs, but when you see Matsuyama, Woodland, and JT all in the top five, you needed to make a combination of those guys. And of course, when you're looking at that top price guy on the board or second price guy on the board, if you go right to Matsuyama, who was third last week, I believe, or fourth, you're totally limiting your entire player pool. Whereas, obviously, if you go down to the 9,000 level after rostering one of these guys, it opens the door up for a little bit of an easier build, which is why, obviously, Woodland worked last week. So do you think that you can get away with stacking them both? Like, could they finish 1-2 and you make a good lineup? About 6,600 left over for it.
I mean, I think if you're running a bunch of lineups, you can look to do that on a small amount. It is an extreme funnel, because if they don't, even if one of them wins, if the other is not up there, there's just going to be so many other people that box you out. Because your back end of the roster, like you just talked about, it's a massive opportunity cost. So, there's so many guys, I think, pairing. I really like Rory this week. I'm sure I will be over the field. It's not like I'm going to just omit the rest of the top range. I'm going to try to mix and match. Don't know if I can do that with JT, but guys like Casey, Fleetwood, that next tier, Hovland, who I think is really interesting this week, I may try to start 1-2 like that.
Yeah, let's talk just quickly as I add up all the ownerships up top. Looks like above 10K, total ownership is going to climb probably pretty close to 100%. So that would suggest likely that one of these guys starts in the lineup. You think that will create an opportunity in that low 9K, high 8K range to get some under-owned guys? Because we know people are going to play Hovland. We know people are going to play Finau now. At 9,200, people love to play him there. So I think, well, before we go into that level, are we pretty sure that Paul Casey and Jordan Spieth are going to be the under 10% above 10K?
I think so. Spieth, he's certainly going to get some boost from last week just with the quality finish, but I still don't think he's going to be up there. And like you mentioned, naturally, most people are going to plug in one of those top guys. And if they go for a second guy, I imagine that falls in the 9K range. So it's just a natural dead zone, which you can exploit if you like the spots.
Yeah, and no surprise, Jordan Spieth led the field in putts per GIR last week. So obviously, if we had strokes gained putting, it's likely he finishes in first or second. 71% of his greens, so not bad. But again, 55% of his fairways. So obviously, we're still struggling in that department. So no surprise to see people not really want to play Jordan at 10K. I'm again surprised that he's even priced there.
Me too. This is a strong field.
Yeah. It's not like, he's number 3 on the board. No, he's probably number 10 on the board, and DK priced him at 5th is interesting. All right. So that next range, I have Fleetwood, Finau, Hovland, and Adam Scott all above 15% or more. You want to debate any of those, or does that sound probably accurate?
I think it's probably – I'm interested to see – I guess Adam Scott would be the mystery guy for me. He's a little premium. He wasn't great in the swing season. He made the cuts, but he didn't do much.
Yep.
The guy who's going to be completely lost to me is Patrick Reed.
Yeah.
I don't see his name at all. Most people, we have so many heavy bomber, Hovland off the tee, Woodland off the tee. We know about Xander, Rory. Then you get Patrick Reed, who does it just a different way. Now, he's been in good form. He went to Europe and, again, very crafty. So if you're making a team where you say, you know what, scrambling, maybe this is more technical type, you can't overpower it. You want to go against the grain up top, Patrick Reed would be your guy.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be, and he played pretty good in Europe. Not great. Before that, in over his starts in the PGA Tour, he went 3 for 3, scoring 75 or more points. So, obviously you want that there. So, yeah, I do believe he comes in likely the lowest in that area. Adam Scott had a tee for 5 at the Japan Open last week, so he's already been over here. If anyone's worried about, the travel or anything like that, Adam Scott already been over there, T5 last week. One of the players in the field this week, Chan Kim, he ended up taking it down. I just thought I'd bring that up. Maybe he's in form. Maybe you want to take a look at him in a no cut. There's just a little throw in there. He beat Adam Scott last week.
There you go. Yeah, Chan Kim and the gang. There's a lot of names. This is a loaded. It's crazy.
Love this field.
The guy we didn't talk about is Tiger. It's amazing,
Yeah.
And I don't really like him, to be honest. There's so many names with Finau, Hovland, Woodland. I mean, those are guys that are going to carry ownership, but it's hard not to be interested in them at the same time.
So one of the takeaways of the first 6 holes that I was awake for was he was super rusty, as to be expected, coming off knee surgery, first semi-competitive round of golf, televised golf that he's played in a while. Yeah, I mean, we know that he's good with his mid-irons to long irons, and if he is going to have 6 or 7 approach shots from 175 or more, yeah, of course Tiger can compete. If the winning score is -9 or lower, yeah, of course Tiger can compete. If he is going to be discounted ownership because it's his first time coming back, I'll have some. I don't know that I'll have a lot. 9,300 is definitely enticing. It's not terribly expensive. But he looked the rustiest out of the 4 of them. I think Matsuyama put a ton of pressure on himself. He probably looked the worst, actually. But in terms of rust, Tiger definitely had a ton. And then there's one other thing about Tiger and Finau, and I guess you could say Jordan Spieth. You could throw him in this loop. I don't know if he's quite worthy of it. But if Jordan goes out and beats Tiger and Tony, does Jordan now get possible President's Cup nomination? And does Tony get it if he beats Tiger? And the theory is out there is that whoever finishes the lowest outside of Finau, who's already in, is going to get the captain's picks, the 2 of them. So we'll see if that ends up being true. But supposedly Tiger has announced that to the players that are still looking for it. I don't know if it's true. Do you buy that?
I mean, I have no idea. It's just something. Again, you can infer where motivation comes in the swing season with some of these. It's such an interesting time of the year because we've got guys we literally haven't seen for months. Then we've got guys that we've seen recently, but their results are way overrated in terms of people look, because that's all we have is like, oh, a guy came in 6th last week. Well, he's a great play this week. Why? Because he played good at the CJ Cup. That doesn't mean, let's not get crazy. It's just tough. So I'm more concerned really about trying to find different paths of how the course plays and then fitting golfers to tailor to those specific conditions. And I think this range is loaded with guys that fit a lot of narratives.
Yeah, let's start right at 9.1. Talk about Morikawa for a second here. Lowest ownership we've seen in probably since he really burst on the scene, since the RBC Canadian Open was last week. Priced kind of up in a strong field. He was 10K. He gets 1,000 off of it this week. Actually, it was 10.1. Speith was 10. He's 9.1 now. Do people go back to him at 12%? And he had that one hot round. Was it enough for you to play him this week at 9.1?
He probably is. It's tough because I think it's more product of just the range. I mentioned I liked a lot of those guys. Him and Fitzy are just kind of sitting there, and I have no problem with either of them. I don't think they're going to be as popular, but I just have too many priorities, and we didn't even mention Jason Day, who leads off the next range.
Yeah.
I like him as well. He's someone in a non-cut. He's just erratic, and that's a good thing. We saw him fire a 66 on Wednesday, Thursday.
Yep.
And then, he kind of fizzled, but we know what's there. So you're a better person to ask. I mean, Morikawa is your guy. You think you can get over if that's where he falls ownership-wise?
Well, it looks like Morikawa, Fitz, Day, Sung Jae, Young Yanon, all going to run in the 10% range likely, which makes sense. Jason Day won the Skin Challenge. What does that mean? Who knows what it really means? But I will say that his drive, he looks much better off the tee. And his putting was so bad at the end of last year that's so unlike him. It heated up last week. It heated up again at the Skins game. So I'm in at Jason Day at 8,900, I think, at 9% ownership, 10% ownership. Hopefully that doesn't trend up too much. But, yeah, I'm in with him. I'm in with Fitzpatrick. Morikawa, yeah, I don't love it. Let me just throw the stats out last week, and you'll kind of see why I don't love it. Only 68% of his greens, but he hit 75% of his fairways. So that means his irons are really not in play now. We get to see a bounce-back week, maybe. So I guess that's what's interesting. He was top 10 in putting. He putts for GIR, so that's probably why he had that one good round. I don't love Morikawa. That 68% greens hit last week, that concerns me a bit for a guy 9,100. If we're talking about 7,200 Corey Connors, who hit 84% of his greens, I would be more apt to play a guy that only hit 68% of his greens at 7,200. 91, you're putting up a lot of your salary. So I guess I'd rather go to Fitzy, who almost won last time out.
Fitzy, I mean, he's ripping off second place finishes like there's no tomorrow.
Yep.
And I think that's important what you just talked about. So we can infer what happened with medieval style stats. We got some GIR, we got driving accuracy, we got putts per GIR. And it's telling, you see some guys, we'll get there when we talk about them. It looks like they didn't putt well, or in like Matthew Wolff's case, he just couldn't hit any, his driver was clearly all over the place. He was just god awful. But man, this is where it gets interesting because guys like Usti show up. And I think he's a great fit for this course, but we legit haven't seen him in a very long time.
Yeah, and I was listening to the telecast, or one of Golf Central, one of those shows. It wasn't during competition. It was it was the Skin Challenge, right before the Skin Challenge. They were saying that guys like Xander, guys like Louis, I think there's a couple of Tigers, one of them, that haven't played yet, making their PGA Tour debut for the season, are a little bit behind guys that have been playing the last couple of weeks. You buy into that, or do you think there's more because there's so much traveling? Maybe there's fatigue on the other end.
So I definitely buy into that. There's a rust factor when you don't play for 2 months. When you're a really good player, I think it's not a matter of can you play well. We know it's in there. It's just your range of outcomes, I think, is a little narrower in the sense of there's just a lot of middling performances. You're working on things simultaneously. But the ownership also somewhat correlates to that. These guys have not been on people's minds. When people look at recent form and they see nothing, that's not, when you look at a range and you see, oh, wow, this guy came in 10th last week and 12th at the Shriners, and then you see another guy who literally has nothing. You tend to side naturally with what you can see. So it's a hit and miss situation. You got to kind of take it as individual plays, because for certain guys, I worry about it, like Tiger specifically. And then other guys like Kisner, for me, I'm willing to take the plunge. I think this is a good enough course where even though we haven't seen him since the Tour Championship, I don't mind taking a stab.
For sure. The last two guys in the 8,000 range, we'll do a one-off here.
Sure.
Sergio Garcia was popular with you last week. Are you going back to that well after pretty underwhelming performance?
I am. So he is someone, and I'm not going to blame it solely on the putter, but from what I saw, he was 71st in putts per GIR. That is not going to get it done. And you know what? I actually can forgive that a little more. The driving, from what I could tell, wasn't stellar by any stretch, but it definitely
73%, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't red flag either. So I think that people again will weigh naturally the CJ Cup out, results heavier than they should. Sergio was a trendy pick last week. I think everybody is now up. You know what, Sergio, terrible. Let me go on. I'll go to Neiman. I'll go to Hadwin, who was fourth and second during the swing season. I'm going to stick with Sergio, a good driver of the ball and someone that could turn the putter around at any time.
Yep, I totally understand that. Okay, my one-off is, sorry, I saw Sergio's name. Now we'll go to my one-off. Neiman versus Hadwin. Both kind of popular right now. Mm-hmm. Hadwin is in great form over the fall swing, put up over 110 DraftKings points in both starts. Neiman obviously had that win 4 weeks ago, another bounce-back week last week, 87 points. Who do you pick in the one-off there? Both going to be kind of popular.
So I'm going to change it up on you just a little bit. I'm going to say I would lean Neiman there. Okay. I just think he fits the course better. But the double not so fast, my friend. Shane Lowry over both of them.
Lowry? You're liking it. Tell me more.
So I'm going to say this. We haven't seen, obviously he broke through. We have not seen much after the marquee win at the Open, and that's to be expected. I kind of like the restart. He got a little work in over in Europe, and he was actually fine. He got cut at the Italian Open. I think that this course, and I talked about this a little with Tim, Bridgestone, I know it's shorter, but I see some Firestone in this. And we know that before the Open, Lowry's marquee win was at the WGC Bridgestone. That tight, kind of narrow, got some trees. It's a weird layout in the sense of you talked about some of those longer par fours. I think he's really apt to handle it. And this is a guy we know who can get hot in a hurry. I like him in the non-cut format.
Yeah, and I've got him. Again, I don't know if this could be right. I'm just a plebe when it comes to ownership projections. If you're looking for the good ones, again, sign up for the awesemo.com plus membership. It's the premium side. They do some of the best work. When they post theirs, I honestly just pretty much erase mine and just paste theirs right over. So anyways, I've got Lowry projected at 2%. So
I think that's accurate for what it's worth. I mean, I'm in a different stratosphere of I defer 100% to these much smarter people at our site that do this stuff. They know what they're doing. But I can tell you, Larry's not going to be popular. We can say that for certain. And he is a very under the radar type play if you're looking to take a plunge on a guy who's just not on the mind of a lot of people.
Two guys that played pretty good last week. One guy was bogey free, I think, through 36, maybe 54. Hit 85% of his fairways, almost 80% of his greens. Terrible putter, but may not have to make as many this week. And I'll say his name in a second. One thing I wanted to bring up, I think the winning score is going to be somewhere in the -9 or 10. Ooh. Because of par 70 and because of the length on the par fours, I don't think we see that many birdies. So I think we see single-digit, low teens. And I think that brings a guy like Ryan Moore into the fray. I haven't played him much, but I think I saw enough last week to get behind him this week. How about you?
I think so too. Ryan Moore is a guy. He has a pretty narrow where he can kind of compete, or at least where I think so.
Yep,
and this certainly fits the bill. Not the longest hitter in the world. Can get short irons in his hands here, and we know it's interesting. So with him, I'll say this. When I think of him long term, he's not a weak putter, but lately he has been kind of a weak putter. So if that can turn around, it's a really good spot to buy because the ball striking is going to cooperate. And like I said, this course is not going to overpower him by any stretch. So I am on board with you trying to piggyback what I think is going to be a good swing season for Ryan Moore.
I would much rather take Ryan Moore, the ball striking machine of Emiliano Grillo, who continued his ball striking machine last week. 86% of his greens, 85% of his fairways for a guy that drives it pretty long. Had a decent putting week, so he actually had a really good week for his value. I'm back in on both him and Moore over a guy like Ian Poulter, who was 20% owned last week, $300 more. he's going to be 20+% owned possibly again this week. I'm just out. I'm going to fade him at these ownership levels.
Me too. My dark horse is Kisner in that range, but Griot is someone. Even when I try to give up, you can't. Not when you're hitting 90%, like you just talked about. That is ungodly.
Of both his fairways and greens, not just one, of both of them, and he still didn't win or even come close.
I said this earlier today. What Griot does, he's such a bad putter. It masks that he's also one of the worst around the green players I've ever seen. People don't talk about that. He was 73rd in scrambling last week. It's unbelievable.
You hate to see that.
It's just so bad. I can't take it. Having said that, he's 7,500, and if you're going to pepper the greens like that, it's hard to ignore. So take it for what it is, but I'm comfortable looking to him and the guys we talked about in this mid-range.
And another thing going for him in terms of ownership, not in terms of his game. we know that he's a two-trick pony, and that's it. He's got the next 6 guys are going to be all really popular in this low 7K range. Ches Reavie, who just continues to be popular, and it looks like he's a really good statistical fit. Andrew Putnam, who had a pretty good week last week and gets, $1,000 price decrease, so ownership's probably going to come with that. Charles Howell, another good week. Pat Perez, a decent week. Corey Connors, a really good week. And then Matt Wolff gets a $1,000 price decrease as well. Had a terrible week, but I feel like people aren't going to be ready to fade him now at really cheap prices. So 6 guys. Of the 6, do you like them all, or do you only like a couple? And do you like Griot over all of them?
So I don't like them all. For me, I'm going to stick when we have more unknowns. I'm trying to embrace maybe some of these just talent-esque things. And to me, Matthew Wolff is the guy that we're going to have some bumps. I'm not too concerned, to be honest. Maybe I'll look back and say, wow, the Asian swing, it really was a rocky time for him and he had some awful showings. Or we could say, wow, the CJ Cup was an awful stretch and then he turned it around. I think that's very possible. And we get a big drop in price. So I like him. Corey Connors is a ball striking machine.
Insane.
Other than that, though, I lean to Griot over the rest of those guys.
Yeah, I'm a Putnam guy because he leans the Spieth way of doing things. He's just a really good putter. The reason why I like really good putters is it's simple. I can rely on them if I need a 6-footer to make the cut. They're going to make it for me. Whereas if I got Griot going up for a 6-footer against the cut, I'm losing probably a couple of days of my life waiting for that update.
You don't have to sweat that because it's not going to go in. There's no sweat. Even if it's 6-footer for birdie, then you have a cut sweat on your hands because you're like, all right, just 2-putt, please.
Just 2-putt, right? Here's what I like about Putnam. 84% of his fairways last week, and we know off the tee is likely his worst stat. So that's really encouraging, especially with a good putter he is. Like I said, it looks like ownership's going to come with him. I like Putnam. I like Corey Connors. I'm going to have to stick with Matt Wolff. There's no way I can play him last week and not play him this week $1,000 cheaper at half the ownership. Not even cheaper, but half the ownership as well. Charles Howell is just super consistent. We talked about him, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we're both like, yeah, he's okay. Ended up coming top 8 or top 6, whatever it was. 7,300 seems like a pretty good price for him. Are you looking to him, or is he just not flashing?
Yeah, I think it's more. I'm not against the play by any stretch. I think it's just I'm kind of indifferent, and you just spoke to some of the other guys in this range that I'm with you. I think, again, I know I'm hitting the same points, but I think it's important to reinforce. Matthew Wolff is a prime example of people possibly overreacting to what we don't have course history. We don't have strokes gain data. So what do people do? They look at just recent form and they say, oh, Matthew Wolff, I played him last week and he was absolutely horrible, just like Sergio. Let me move on. I think that's a little short-sighted. These guys can turn it around, and I think we both acknowledge that Matthew Wolff has all the talent in the world to compete anytime he tees it up.
No doubt about it. I mean, he showed us not too long ago that he's got that. So, all right, we'll drop a little bit down as we go onto our 4th segment here, some cheapies. I'll then give you a couple of the Asian Tour guys that are playing this week that caught my name, and then we'll go in the real cheapies. So first thing I want to bring up, He was very popular last week. I don't think he'll be as popular this week. However, in 6 of his last 7 starts, he's put up 75 or more DraftKings points. That's Harold Varner at 6,800. That'd be some pretty darn good value if he does that again this week.
He's getting down there. This is a stronger field, so we see the price drop like a lot of guys. And you mentioned it. He hasn't really exploded per se, but he had a lot of, he was 19th at Greenbrier, 17th at Safeway last week, quietly, hung around top 25 type thing. I think he makes an interesting play. Bubba is there, who normally I would look to, but he's just been bad. I don't think I can get there. The one other guy I want to mention with HV3 is Ryan Palmer, who he's also playing pretty good. Keep it out of the drink, as we know that's always priority number one for him. I think his game could translate here, though. Get some irons in his hands and attack these pins.
Yeah, I think Ryan Palmer sets up relatively good for this course if he can use his driver to his advantage. Another guy, and I will say there are a couple of guys that I'm okay with playing in some pretty big spots this week. Graham McDowell is one of them, who we're at a 7,000-yard course. If there's any correlation to the way it sets up to Pebble Beach, we know McDowell dominated Pebble Beach in that style. Now, that was, 25 years ago? No, maybe not 25, but he hit a ton of his greens last week, too. Let me give you that, just so I don't mess it up. McDowell hit 81% of his greens and 73% of his fairways. Putted okay, putted pretty good. I do like Graham McDowell down there. And then, a guy that I love to talk about, 6,600, came in the top 10 last week, was Windham Clark.
This guy.
Kind of out of nowhere again. I don't know what that means for this week. I feel like last week the fairways were much wider, and that helped him out tremendously. Fairways aren't as wide this week, which means he's not going to hit as many greens. Does around the green get him? I'm not sure. But 6,600, you have to at least be interested. Same with Kevin Streelman, who also had a good week. Either of those guys interesting, or you want to go somewhere else like Abraham Answer?
So, God, I want to go to Abraham Answer, but I can't get there.
He's awful.
I just don't. His game is so disproportionately heavy in terms of gaining off the tee, and he's not doing that right now. And when he doesn't do that, it's over. So I think for me, I'm going to take a stab with JT Poston. We knew, and I'm not surprised he cooled off a bit after he broke through at Windham. Yeah. But this is still someone we saw, he was good at Sanderson Farms, not good at Shriners. I trust him maybe just a smidge more than someone like Windham Clark, who I agree, I don't think this is the best course for the way he plays. I looked at Fratelli. He's all over the place, I'll be honest. I don't really have a strong take on him. Other than that, though, Poston, Berger, 6,500 are the two guys that I really zeroed in on.
Yeah, Fratelli, almost 80% of his greens last week. Tying Court Connors did not putt as well, it looks like. But definitely I think I'm going to be in on a lot of these guys in this range. McDowell, Varner. A little nervous about Ryan Palmer. As we go down, is Kevin Streelman going to make the player pool for you this week or no?
I think he will. He's another guy that I like at kind of shorter courses. He can get some irons. The one thing I worry about with him, he's not the best on bent grass, but again, I think that's more secondary. If you like the play, you can stomach it a little easier. And it's been an interesting swing season for him. He's been bad, except when he's good, he's really good. So he was 4th at Sanderson Farms. He missed the cut everywhere else, and then he was 12th at the CJ Cup. So he's making a big case for a boom-bust type guy right now, which is what you're looking for.
A guy that seems to, that doesn't always, outscore his finishing position. First of all, almost the king of that is Charlie Kaufman, first of all. He was last week. But Sung Kang is another one. 26 last week, but came in the top 20 in DraftKings point scoring with 83 last week. He's 6,300. I don't mind somebody like him. Also, I don't mind somebody like Nate Lashley. 6,400, had a pretty decent week last week. Are you going back into Joel Damon?
Lord Raiden. I don't think so. I played him a bit last week, and it, not great, not terrible, but certainly wasn't what I was looking for. It's more just a different situation where I don't know how many times I need to go down here. I have Berger. I have some of those guys. I think I'd just rather find the extra couple $100 on more often than not. I also have one deep sleeper.
Love it.
CT Pan, who's not playing well. But I think this is a very good course for the way he kind of plays. We've seen him have success on similar layouts. Keep it in the fairway. That's going to be the big key. He has to do that. If he does, though, I think the putter's going to turn around. He's historically much better than he's been showing on the greens. He's only 6,200, practically, one of the only guys you can look to down there.
Yeah, he is. I will say, makes me nervous that he only hit 64% of his fairways last week. Again, there could be a lot of things going into it. But he's a name that I also thought was 6,200. Seemed low, priced with Shawn Norris and the guys. I played Troy Merritt last week based on the birdie or better percentage. It didn't really pay off for me. I mean, he was okay. I think he put up, the 60s? Yeah, 66.5 points. Not going to get it done. I'm okay having a couple shares of these guys down here because we saw Danny Lee last week where he was the lowest priced PGA Tour player. You put him at 5%, you have 2x the field, and you had a significant boost to your JT lineups. I'm going to take that same approach this week with Satoshi Kodaira, Max Homa, Troy Merritt, and CT Pan. I'm just going to do the exact – and Adam Schneck for that same reason, and Adam Long for that exact same reason.
If you
Yeah, go ahead.
No, just to add to that, I mean, you have to work as a collective unit, and if you really like two big top-end guys to be up there, you got to mix and match at the bottom because all it takes is most likely these guys are going to play bad. But all it takes is one of them to play good, and those lineups you're starting to build the foundation for an actual six-man lineup, which is what we're trying to do when you step back and think about it. So I totally get that concept. Chad is talking about Satoshi Kodaira. A lot of hot takes around this dude. That is saucy, but I think naturally. What about Vaughn Taylor? I just saw his name here.
Yeah, Taylor and Stewart were the cheap chalks last week, and neither panned out. Neither played well. I'm out. So Satoshi Kodaira, you mentioned, and Daniel Berger, you mentioned, both are here on sponsors exemptions. Same way Danny Lee was there last week. They're joined by Mikumu Horikawa and Junichiro Kazuma. So Kyle Kazuma and Ichiro, the baseball player, together. Not interested in those two, but there's three guys. I don't know if I'm interested in, but I want to bring them up with you to see if they made your player pool. We've seen this guy Shugo Imahara a couple of times, 27-year-old from Japan. Played in a couple of majors, missed the cut. Played in the Sony Open, made the cut. Any interest in Shugo? He's priced kind of high.
So that's the one problem. Shugo is not, to me, a creative player, as I coined them. I actually know who that is.
Yes.
If he was 6,200, I actually would definitely look to him. The problem is I'm deciding between him and Matthew Wolff. That's not going to work. It's just a little too pricey for me.
And then you throw in there's like 8 of these guys. I'm not going to give them all to you. But Jazz Janawatanan was like 10% owned last week at 7K, and now he's 6,400. Got his feet under him. What do you think about him?
Jazz. The problem with Jazz, and maybe it's fleeting, maybe it's just the CJ Cup and it'll dissipate. The mileage he's getting from the PGA in terms of ownership is really making it difficult to play a guy that I thought the appeal of him was he's a true 1%er in a field like this. Well, that's not the case, as you just talked about. If he's going to be, where I need to get 12, 15% to get real leverage, I have a really tough time going with him over guys that I have more basic information on that play on the PGA Tour.
One guy that has played on the PGA Tour that lost his card, stepped away from golf altogether for at least a year and a half, and he's still under the age of 30. And that's Roy Ishikawa. Almost won the Shriners back in 2013 as a 22-year-old. He was supposed to be like the next thing, and then Matsuyama came and totally next best thing from Japan in terms of Japanese golf. He's had a great year on the Japanese tour, a resurgent year. You expect him to maybe have a bounce back, maybe get it. He's obviously played with these guys, played on the PGA Tour before. Somebody like him make your player pool this week.
He didn't, but I considered him. Honestly, it's a guy that we know has a little bit of talent. I just, again, you talked about, and we mentioned these guys, so I don't need to rehash it, but like Berger, Nate Lashley. There's just so many Sun Kang. There's so many other flyers that I have ahead of him. He's not the guy who wears the cowboy hat, right?
Yeah, he was. Semi-cowboy hat. I don't know if he still does.
That changes things now.
You put him and Joel Damon in the same group, and you have got some headwear.
As I talk about, it's all about correlation. So if you're gonna take outrageous hats, get Ben Crane and this gang, and just call it a day. But
what a magical threesome that would be.
That's some real sick stuff going on here. Who is? And then we'll get a hot take, and we'll get on out of here.
Yeah.
Who is Tomoharu Utsuku?
Yeah, 29-year-old from Japan. He's here because of the Bridgestone Open. He came in third there where Shugo won it. That's how Shugo got in this. And a guy by the name of Steve Hahn, who goes by Sang-Soo Hahn, came in second in that event, and that's how he's here. PGA Tour had him as Steve Hahn. He goes by Sang-Soo. That's who DraftKings has him by. And then just two more. Chan Kim, number 75 in the world, won the Japanese Open last week. We mentioned him at the top of the show. Form obviously is there. He just beat Adam Scott. And another guy who beat Adam Scott is Shawn Norris. He's a world traveler. He likes to play on these smaller tours. He's ranked in the top 100 in the world now. We've seen him in some WGC events. He known for more of a bomber. I don't think I'm going to get to him this week, but just wanted to bring those two guys up because Chan Kim you may have heard of. He's an American, and Shawn Norris has been around for a little while.
Yeah, Shawn Norris is a guy that we see certainly in Europe, and more when they go kind of to South Africa, which I believe he is South African. The Joburg Open and some
the
of
Sunshine Tour,
yeah, the Sun, exactly. So maybe he's the next Justin Harding. Those guys come out of nowhere.
Justin Harding,
that guy. I'm not even gonna get started with his freaking broom putter, just making everything. But I think like we always preach, it's a very fine line between doing what you talked about, and that's taking some flyers down here to match up with those top end plays, and then blindly just playing. Oh, this guy's going to be 1%. That's crazy. You want to make sure you have reasons for taking some of these guys. They're not all going to pan out, but as Danny Lee showed, that type of build is certainly viable in these type of non-cut events.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I think I had one other note. The only one that I want to notice is Matty Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Patty Perez, and Bubba Watson are here on sponsors exemptions. Again, it's just, they didn't qualify for the FedEx Way, and obviously they're big enough names. So just wanted to bring that up. Which two of those guys can fit what I'm about to say, and maybe I should say okay, here are the five guys that I'm going to cover. But I think that we're going to get this week, moving into our hot take, I think we're going to get a first-time winner, somebody winning the Puerto Rico Open, so I can get Tony Finau in there.
Okay. Oh, that counts.
Yeah, I'm going to get Tony Finau. I'm going to get Tommy Fleetwood. I'm going to get Matt Fitzpatrick. I'm going to get Victor Hovland. One of those four, I just feel like the course, I think, fits all four of them in a way, and I think that they're so primed. I know I'm taking some chalk there, but I like one of those four to come out.
I like it. First of all, I want to say I got partial. As bad as my Sergio take was, I did have Benny on as a low South Korean, and he did.
You did. That was huge. Did you bet that too?
I did not. I wish I did. That would have been better than the bets that I made, which were not good. Sergio did not win the tournament. Spoiler alert. My hot take this week is I'm going to say that JT doesn't come in the top 15. I think that this could be a little, not regression. I don't want to say that. I just kind of have a gut feeling that he doesn't follow it up. And it's more, again, we know that Justin Thomas is the type of guy who can rip off multiple victories in a row. But I really feel pretty strongly that you can go elsewhere and take the stab here if the ownership dictates. Now, at the top of the show, you talked about maybe we don't see him as high as I think. That would change. In terms of building your lineups. But if he's a lightning rod up top, I'm saying that we don't see as crisp a performance, and some other guys really compete this week. Maybe one of your guys' first-time winners out there.
Would be nice.
God, it feels gross saying that because JT is so good. It's hard to you got to give him credit. The guy's unbelievable.
He is, and when he's putting, it just brings everything else into.
Oh, good. Way to record these, by the way, because I forget
Yeah, I just recorded. I just forgot what mine was last week. So I'm like, what? I have Slack open. I can just message him so we can actually
I
remember.
literally forget every single week. Well, that's good because swing season. This is where we get warmed up, and then we start tallying them off. But any final thoughts before we get on out of here for the ZOZO?
Yeah, we got one China event after this, and then we actually get a week off, I believe, and then we're back for 3 weeks before we get a month off. 2 or 3 weeks. I know we go to Sea Island and then we go to Mayakoba.
Mm-hmm.
So we still got plenty of golf left for the end of the year. I know that we are super busy here. We got NBA just started today. NFL is in full swing. NHL in full swing. So we're totally busy here. We appreciate everybody coming and joining us for the golf show. On the way out, of course, hit the like button for us if you could. It is a no cut. But don't take too many chances. You saw last week, if you did that, you probably ran yourself into a little trouble. So still say stay relatively balanced in the builds. Don't go crazy like me and stack 3 guys and then 3 mid-price guys. It just won't pay off.
More times than not, really isn't. You want to build, like I said, just take some stabs. It's a course where we don't know. Look at, Google it, try to get some information and say, I think the course plays like this, and then build accordingly.
Oh yeah. I will say to that point, if you go to Google ZOZO Championship, that'll bring you to the site. They have a YouTube video of every single hole, a flyover. So if you think you can glean something from that, I watched every video. I thought it was cool. I like to see the course. So if you want, definitely a way to do that there.
Yeah. And, again, I think we don't know what we don't know. I think that's really what it comes down to. And you can make your own decisions on how you think that course plays. My plan is to try to attack it mostly with driver heavy guys, but at the same time, still back it up with maybe some more technical type teams. So we will get out of here. I do want to say thanks real quick again to Fantasy Draft. Go sign up there if you haven't. And obviously, you should be a member of Awesome Plus if you haven't signed up with us. We have a ton of packages. I really like what we're doing now where we have different types of packages that suit different types of players. So if you're a really casual person, we have some things where you get the bare bones. If you're really in depth, you get the full, enchilada where we got everything behind the paywall. And we can find everything in between. So if you're apprehensive, get a week, check it out, couple bucks. And if you don't like it, then you can message me in Slack and yell at me. But if you do, which I'm sure you will, then you can hang out and talk to us and tilt those golfers. So we're going to get on out of here. Good luck, everyone. And as Jason said, we'll be back Tuesday, right?
Tuesday night for the 3rd week in a row, and then we'll be back to our Wednesday spot.
Beautiful. So on that note, we'll get on out of here. We'll be back next week for the WGC China.